Hey, what's up? Sean here. It's your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors. And on today's show, we finally have a real basketball game to talk about. It's been a little while, but the Toronto Raptors played a very competitive game against the Philadelphia 76ers last night. Even still down some guys. They did get a few back, though. Pascal Siakam had a great game. We'll talk about that. Chris Boucher went off with a 28 and 19. We'll dig into that as well. All with special guest Chelsea Leite of Raptors HQ as we dig into our big takeaways. Also, we got the dude of the game to hand out, as we always do on a game recap podcast as well. That's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1087 of Locked On Raptors for Wednesday, December the 29th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter as always at WoodleySean. You can find the show at Locked On Raptors, and you can find the podcast free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms. So please follow, subscribe, rate, and review. And you can also subscribe to the podcast on YouTube so you can see my face every single day. Who wouldn't want that, frankly, other than my mom? So please go do that. It's much appreciated when you help support and stroke my ego and build the numbers up over on that YouTube channel. And thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. On today's show, we are talking about the Raptors' 114-109 loss to the Philadelphia 76ers last night. Still shorthanded, but a little bit less so last night. And we got lots to dig into from what was a very, very fun basketball game with today's guest, one of our wonderful staffers over at Raptors HQ, making her debut appearance on the podcast. It's writer, comedian, Chelsea Leite. How's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. Really happy to have you on for the first time on the show. Thanks for, punching down and hanging out. I always love it when people decide to do that. So let's dig into this game, Chelsea. I think the place to start here is probably Pascal Siakam. The Raptors get him back last night after he missed the game against the Cavs, and I think he missed the Warriors game now that I'm thinking about it as well. It was his first game since that Brooklyn game a couple weeks ago. Time is fake. I don't know what's going on. It's ridiculous how much time has passed, and they've only played one or two games in the meantime. So I guess they've kind of lucked out there a little bit with all the cancellations. Either way, Chelsea, Pascal Siakam last night, 28 points, 6 boards, 8 assists, 11 of 21 shooting, 6 of 6 from the line, had just 3 turnovers, and I thought this was one of his best games ever as like a number one option. The way they flowed the offense through him, he made incredible decisions all night long, keeping it for himself when he had to, going up against Joel Embiid when he wanted to, finding the outlet whenever, Embiid was too imposing and large and in his way. Chelsea, what were your impressions of Pascal Siakam's game last night? Because I thought he was fantastic.
Oh, yeah, he was. And it really was that kind of, I guess, fight mentality where he didn't have his partner in Fred VanVleet. And what I was really impressed with him is how well he was creating for others in a role that's not usually his. He's not the guy who's going to be, dishing out a lot of assists. And so he kind of had to step up and do that a little bit more as, the Raptors didn't have like a true point guard. And so I was definitely impressed by his assist numbers. Pascal getting 30 isn't really a rare occurrence. So in that sense, it's just Pascal doing Pascal things. But I was really impressed with how he was passing and kind of like working with the team. And, him and Gary especially were kind of trying to fill in that Fred role. And I guess that's what they're going to have to do until he gets back.
Yeah, it was a lot of Trent Siakam pick and roll last night, and it actually kind of had some pretty good results at times. Maybe less so when Gary Trent's handling the ball, just because he's not exactly pass first or whatever. But that's not what we loved Gary Trent Jr. for, so it's fine. It's just a difficult spot he was put into, having to be one of the main guys. Trent had a bit of a rough shooting night, 6 of 24. He did hit those couple big buckets late, some very ballsy ones, which was always fun to see. But back to Siakam, the thing about the game that I really appreciated was, like, Embiid has kind of always been this bugaboo to him, right? He's enormous. You think back to the playoffs and the frustration that Siakam ran into. Probably the first time he's kind of faced that kind of adversity in a playoff series, going up against Joel Embiid after having his way with the Magic back in 2019 pretty easily. And to me, it just kind of felt like he had Embiid on a string. Look, Embiid's amazing. He was incredible in this game. He's the reason the Sixers won. He's the reason the Sixers do anything because the rest of that team is deeply uninspiring. But like Siakam had a really good feel for when Embiid was coming to help, where he was helping from, and what passes that was opening up. And then a couple times he just took it to Embiid, and I thought that was awesome. He picked up a couple fouls, got to the line. Like, I don't know, Chelsea. We've talked about Pascal Siakam a lot on this podcast. Everyone kind of knows my stance on him. I think people are stupid if they don't really appreciate how good he is. And there's just this like conflation of what his contract is versus what he is as a player. And I think both are exceedingly fine, and there's nothing to be upset with either. But for you, like, as you've envisioned this team going forward, we haven't seen them at full capacity. Obviously, they have only had OG and Siakam available for, I think, 4 games together this season. We haven't seen their best lineups, all of that. Where does Siakam fit in for you in terms of like hierarchy once this team is fully healthy? Because I know there's this sort of faction out there that's like, oh, just give the ball to Scotty Barnes. I know I kind of made that claim on the podcast last week, a little bit hyperbolically, probably. You've got Fred VanVleet, obviously, is having an all-star level season. He's been doing a great job running the offense. How much would you like to see Siakam sort of used as the fulcrum of the offense like we saw last night? Because like if he can do it like he did last night, there's no reason to not run every single possession through him because he was that good.
Yeah, and in terms of like where his place is, especially with Scotty Barnes back in the lineup, I think Scotty's amazing, obviously, and he has so much left to grow, but he's still a rookie, and obviously he's going to make rookie mistakes. And I think the ideal balance between the two of them would just have Siakam lead and Scotty Barnes follow and watch. I think that's a great opportunity Scotty has to see someone like Siakam play and see how they operate. And on the other hand, those guys play sometimes like upwards of like 30-40 minutes in a game, and so to have Pascal play and then have Scotty Barnes be the guy that's playing when they're on the bench and like still being able to produce would be an incredible option for us. And so I definitely think he's our first option, and we have to play through him. And Scotty Barnes is the future as well, and so having the two of them play off of each other would just be like perfect.
Yeah, I'm growing much more, and I've been keen on this idea for a while, but the idea of like Scotty and Gary Trent Jr. kind of getting that early sub out and joining the second unit and kind of running that second unit when they're at full health, I think looks pretty exciting to me, especially with the way that Scotty's just like bombing away from 3 and stuff now. The spacing seems to be less of a problem with him. And honestly, that's another reason to kind of maybe flow things through Siakam more a little bit once they're at full health, is if, Scotty can capably space the floor, is not, afraid to put up corner threes and whatnot. I kind of like the idea of Siakam being that sort of central figure and then picking out all of his many very good shooters while he's kind of in the middle of the floor. It's one of them good problems. They have lots of guys you can run the offense through, and I think the most surprising thing of this season has been that the offense has not felt like that much of a problem, even on nights like last night where they were not at all healthy or full or complete. We lost Chelsea there, but Chelsea's back. It's just, it's been a really fun offense to watch, I think, even though sometimes it can kind of get bogged down at this low assist rates and all this stuff. It's kind of all over the place. I really think it's a fun and interesting offense to watch because of the number of guys who can kind of show a little bit of dynamism and get shots for themselves. And I think Siakam last night really kind of proved that he's the cream of the crop when it comes to Raptors doing that very thing. Any other quick big takeaways from this game, Chelsea? I think, there was the sort of, oh my God, how are they going to guard Embiid? They have no centers. That's always going to be their predicament when they play the Sixers, and there's no Embiid. That's just the way it is. And, they've kind of set themselves up to have to live like that until they get a sort of a more real, bigger center in. But what did you think of the way they kind of dealt with Embiid? Obviously, Embiid has himself a big night. He had 36 points, 11 boards, 4 assists. But I still thought they did a pretty good job of just like doing their best to stop him, which sometimes is all you can really ask for. What did you think of the way they guarded Embiid?
I thought it was, considering they don't have a center, essentially, I thought we did really well. I mean, if anything, it's like a testament to where the Sixers are to how that game was and how close it was in the end. It was only, I think, like a 5-point game in the end. And, that's promising, and that shows that, if we had a few more of our regular pieces in, that I think we definitely would have won that game by a lot more.
Yeah.
Just saying something, because the Sixers are up there, and I think that's definitely shows just like how much more we have to improve once we get healthy. And I just think they did a really good job of just like sticking it out and not giving up, and not kind of saying like, oh, like we don't have two or three of our better players still, so we're just going to try and, survive. They actually tried to like, get out a win. And, unfortunately it sucks when it's that close win, and for a second you kind of think we're gonna get away with it, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there was only so much they could do against Embiid down the stretch. It did kind of feel like instant buckets sometimes, and they were just kind of tossing it to him. He had that three as well late that was such a like backbreaker, because Embiid's amazing. He's incredible, but like I think the way they kind of approached him, where it was, sending doubles his way as much as they could. They were, Yuto was like extremely eager with the help defense and all that stuff. I think the approach was right, and I think the fact that the rest of the Sixers shot horribly from the field in this game, and just really kind of did not make good on those playmaking opportunities that Embiid had when those doubles came his way. I thought that was, that's probably the move there, right? Is you try to force him to pass out as much as you can. Eventually, he's going to score 36 on you because the tallest person you have against him is Yuta Watanabe, and Chris Boucher is getting, batted around and all that. But I thought, overall, the way they defended him was pretty reasonable. And I think you can kind of still see why he says, that the Raptors give him the most problems than anybody else, even without their guys to do it. They still kind of, made it annoying enough where they could hang into this game and barely scrape by.
Oh yeah.
The things I thought they really missed, I mean, like Barnes and Anunoby are so crucial to that Embiid defense, right? Because they're so long, they cover so much ground, they can get out after sending doubles and get out and contest. That obviously is the thing they were missing. And then I think the thing they were missing most was Fred's dig downs. Like against Embiid, he's so deadly, kind of getting in there as this small man, just ripping the ball away from the large dude. And he couldn't do that in this game because he wasn't there. And, Malachi Flynn not really doing that on the defensive end at the same level as Fred VanVleet. Nobody does it on the same level as Fred VanVleet, but it was a pretty rough state of affairs with, just sort of the personnel they had. But I thought they did a pretty good job kind of hanging in against a very tough assignment to give themselves a shot to win. Chelsea, we're going to continue on here. We're going to dig into some other observations from this game. I want to talk about DJ Wilson, who is a freaking hero. We're going to talk about Malachi Flynn, I think, as well, a little bit too. We'll get to that in 1 second here. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Truebill, who are the company that's saving you money because they're helping you cancel the unwanted subscriptions you no longer want or need or simply forgot about. It's very hard to remember all the different free trials you sign up for and the money you're set to pay. And these companies aren't helping you remember either. They're not sending you reminders like, hey, guess what? Your free trial ends soon. We're going to start charging you money on this date. They just start charging you money on that date, and it is miserable. So I highly recommend you check out Truebill because companies make subscriptions extremely hard to cancel. Truebill is here to make it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, so you don't have to. Truebill has over 2 million users worldwide, and it's helped them save over $100 million in subscription fees that people don't want to be paying for anymore. Stop falling for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now to truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could save you thousands. Go to truebill.com/lockedonnba. Continuing on here with your first listen of the day with Chelsea Leite of Raptors HQ. And Chelsea, let's talk a little about DJ Wilson. He is not going to be your dude of the game. That is somebody else coming up later in the show. But we got to talk about him a little bit. He played 13 minutes in this game, all in the second half, because he did not clear the COVID protocols until the end of the first half, which is very 2021. He comes in, he plays 9 minutes, gets 6 boards, 2 of 3 from the field, goes to the line 6 times, hits 5 of them, is a plus 12. Very easily their best center defender of the night, the guy who gave them the best shot against Embiid. Lots of hustle, lots of energy, all that stuff. What were your thoughts on DJ Wilson, Chelsea? And are you already looking at DJ Wilson as potentially a guy that the Raptors should be locking into a real contract beyond his 10 days?
Yeah, I mean, out of the 4 that they've signed, he's definitely made the most impact in the time that he's been, with us, and I mean, I think he really has that kind of Raptors mentality where it's like that next man up kind of thing, he
Mhm.
came, he understood his assignment, he got in, he made an impact. I think he's full of energy and full of, he just has that kind of grit that is needed during this time to just kind of like get shit done. But I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Sorry, but
No, it's all right. We can put it into the YouTube rating. It's fine.
all right. But yeah, he got in there and he did what he had to do, and he was efficient. And I think that's all you can ask of these guys who you're just calling up randomly. I mean, they haven't even had a full practice with the team yet, and he's doing
Mhm.
that and making that impact. So I definitely think he's someone that the Raptors should look into and develop. I mean, for him, if I was him, I would be really happy with where I am right now, just because he's on a team that prioritizes development that much. And
Mhm.
you're a young guy and you're kind of in the G League and you want to get up there. I mean, what better position to be in than to be called up by the Raptors, in my opinion. Um, so, I think he's someone that could probably make a difference for us going forward, someone who could be on the bench. And, we don't really have that depth in the center position. And so
Mhm.
anyone who can help us out there when, guys like Kem Birch are out, or, when you have to, rotate guys and you need someone to come off the bench and give that impact, like, have that impact. I think he's someone that could do that. And so, yeah, for sure. I think that we should keep him and see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, he's making himself a really good case right now. Of course, they have that open roster spot that they released Sam Decker from. Obviously, a tax-related move that was, and so who knows how much that is going to play into their decision making when it comes to what they do. Is the tax going to be a consideration? And before you're like, oh, well, it shouldn't be a consideration. They should just pay the tax. Like, there's reasons not to pay the tax. If you are not a contending team, it becomes prohibitive multiple years down the road if you pay the tax too often. So you have to be selective and smart about when you pay the tax. For those of you who are screaming, just pay them, because I also am very much just a just pay money type person. It's not my money, I don't care. But the tax actually does have a competitive advantage to not paying for those who are again out there sort of just screaming for them to sign DJ Wilson for all sorts of exorbitant amounts of money. I think there's obviously the Goran Dragic thing, and maybe this sort of forces their hand a little bit. If Wilson's a guy they don't want to let go, the way he's played, I'm sure other teams would want to pick him up. Maybe this is sort of going to force their hand on like a buyout for Dragic or something like that. That maybe that's a little bit too premature, but that's another consideration. But I think a few more games the way he's played, there's no reason why DJ Wilson shouldn't be someone they consider as like a third big type guy. Obviously, he's probably not going to play a ton if they're at full health. Kem Birch, Precious Achua, both guys they have more invested in, both guys who are better overall basketball players. But the way Wilson's played, I think he's making a pretty decent case to get himself an NBA job, which is very good for him. Even if it doesn't come with the Raptors, I think he's probably gotten himself back in the NBA mix. So awesome story, sort of one of the only cool silver linings of this nightmare part of the schedule that we've been in. I want to ask you about Malachi Flynn, Chelsea.
Yeah.
Last night, he plays 32 minutes. He starts coming back from COVID protocols, goes 2 of 12, 2 of 8 from 3, 6 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, and was pretty ineffectual, I think, most of the game. Again, the 2 of 12 is the big thing that kind of is the glaring sort of standout number from his box score. Where are you at with Malachi Flynn, Chelsea? I want to be in so bad, but
Yeah.
I find myself falling more and more out on Malachi Flynn. Where are you at with him?
Yeah, I feel like last year he was definitely part of, he was kind of that third option. So you had Kyle, you had Fred, and he was just kind of learning. And I think that gave him more opportunities to kind of fail. And of course, when you're a rookie, you kind of get, a few more chances. But now, he's expected to be the backup, if anything,
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I've like you said, I want to be so invested, and there's times where he's amazing. And you're like, oh, like that's what we need to see, but it's just been a lot of inconsistency, and I definitely think that if he's gonna stay in the lineup and if he's gonna, be that backup, now's the time. Your point guard is gone, and you have to step up. And I think last night was a really good opportunity for him to step up, and unfortunately, it just wasn't his night. So, I mean, hopefully he'll improve. I mean, I want to believe in him. You want the guys that we drafted to do well, and to thrive in our system. But I honestly think, he did really well in his 905 stretch last year. Like, why not
Yeah.
put it back down there and see, what he can do for them and see if that kind of helps him develop a bit more. He had such like a short run with them last season because of their like
Yeah.
short bubble season. And I feel like it's just a lot of pressure on him right now. So maybe that's what's getting him. Maybe that's what, needs to be a little bit of pressure be relieved from him for him to start to develop a little bit more. But I mean, something's not clicking. And unfortunately, that's not going to turn out well for him if he keeps on, that path.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we should say, and in fairness, like last night was a really difficult situation for everyone who played. It was short notice, not a lot of conditioning, no practice time for a couple weeks. It'd been 2 weeks since most of these guys had played.
Yeah.
That said, like Pascal Siakam looked just fine, and Gary Trent Jr. missed a lot of shots, but he got himself kind of involved in the action pretty quickly in a way that Flynn just did not. And look, I don't know. Like, they don't have much in the way of options right now. They could have had Dragic. I still think they probably should have handled that situation differently and maybe had Dragic be their backup while Flynn went down to the G League and kind of seasoned himself up down there. I don't need to rehash that. I've done that a million times, and I'm driving myself to the point of insanity talking about it on the podcast. But I just, like, is there something that you want to see from Flynn in particular, like a thing within his skill set, a thing within the way he plays, to kind of give you encouragement that maybe he can be salvaged as a rotation player going forward here? And again, it's totally unfair to be like this down on Malachi Flynn. He didn't have a real rookie season. He didn't have a real training camp. Only has been to one summer league. There's a lot, but like lots of guys from last year's first round have started to make an impact. And so you have to sort of look at like, where do you think are the sort of avenues for improvement with him? Because I don't really know right now. Like it's like, it seems like it kind of is out there. Like he takes 12 shots last night. It's the aggression you're looking for, but like the shot making just is not there. Is there a sort of salve here for his game that you're kind of looking at? Like if he can kind of touch up that one thing, he's going to be fine.
I honestly think he needs to make his shots. I mean, that's what's going to make an impact, is getting those shots. And I think also in his position, he should, if the shots are coming for him, he should, try to be creating for others a little bit more and seeing what he can do off the ball, maybe helping his defense a little bit more. I think the thing about Gary Trent Jr., like you mentioned, sure, his shots weren't falling, but he was finding other ways to be really impactful in the game. And that's what's really made the difference for Gary Trent Jr. this year, is just all of the things that he's done, like in addition to his shooting. I think a lot of people were kind of questioning Gary Trent Jr., like, oh, like, is he that good of a shot maker? But then he just came out this year and was just like a monster on defense. And so now everybody's like, oh, okay, like that's his thing. And so I think Malachi Flynn just needs to find his thing and run with it. And if that thing isn't shooting, then he needs to figure out what it is fast and start doing it so he can make an impact. And I think that's what makes the difference with these guys is, which way do they make an impact? And, if they can do it really well, then, then they'll be okay. But with him, I think if his shots aren't falling, he needs to figure out what to do about that, and either make his shots or find something else that he's good at.
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing, is because like he doesn't really get a chance to showcase the thing that he is kind of touted as being good at, which is running pick and roll, right? Because they don't run a ton of pick and roll on this team. It's just not how they do it. They don't have a ton of great big partners for him. Maybe DJ Wilson is the savior as the roll man partner for Malachi Flynn. What a depressing sentence that was. But like he doesn't really get the opportunity to flex his muscle in that department. He doesn't really have, like, he's good at jumping passing lanes. He has some defensive instincts, but he's just not big enough to be like a real impact defender. And, obviously Fred VanVleet's 5'11". He's not big either, but he's built like a fire hydrant. And that's not really what Malachi Flynn has going for him. And so he doesn't really get to impact the game on the defensive end in that tangible a way, even though he has been a positive defensive player by defensive win shares and whatnot over the course of his career, where he's been basically a net neutral or negative on offense. And we're now at 69 games for him played in the NBA, over 1,000 minutes. He's at 47.6 true shooting percentage. Most of his threes are coming, or his shots are coming from three. So there's not like a lot of penetration going on and not a lot of sort of like dynamism to his offense. I still hold out some hope, and it's, again, 69 games is not a lot of games, right? So it's worth kind of mentioning that, but I will consider myself extremely concerned about Malachi Flynn and his ability to kind of take the reins and become a legitimate option as a backup point guard for this team. They looked best last night, when Pascal had the ball in his hands, and I know, it's just not even close. And I did not want any possessions where Malachi was running things because Pascal was out there for 42 minutes because he had to be, because there was no reasonable backup option for point guard. We'll continue on here, Chelsea, and round things out and talk about the dude of the game. And I also want to just kind of ask you about the team in general, sort of framed around Boucher and his improvement. We'll get to that in 1 second here. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at betonline.ag. You've got you covered all season, all holiday season, that is, with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues its march through the college bowl season and into the pro football playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. You can head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Meaning, if you put in $100, you get an extra $50 added to your account for free. That is a wonderful deal. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive that very special bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait and take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. So don't wait and take advantage of all the offers waiting for you right now at betonline.ag, where the game starts. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. It's the New Year's. That means New Year's resolutions, baby. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier or just not eating 7 chocolate bars a day like mine is going to be about, then I highly recommend you check in on the Built Bar and work them into your plans. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar in some cases. And it is makes it so it's easier to stick to your resolution because you want that sweet, indulgent treat, but you can go with a Built Bar instead of a chocolate bar or any other sort of confection, and you're not going to be disappointed because it's delicious. It tastes like a regular candy bar. It's not all choxy or waxy or disgusting or chemically like a lot of the protein bars you get out there. Instead, it's just tasty, it's healthy, and it's wonderful, and it makes you feel pretty good about having it. Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. You've got 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein in most bars. Compare that to a candy bar that's like 240 calories on the low end, 30 grams of sugar, who wants that, and dozens of net carbs. Here's an idea for the new year. Go to all your secret treat stashes at home, in the pantry, office, car, wherever. Throw out all the sugary stuff and replace them with Built Bars. That's what I got to be doing. I've done the thing where I eat all the stuff in the first couple days after Christmas, so there's nothing left in the house, and I feel like garbage as a result. But now Built Bars are populating all my little nooks and crannies where my treats tend to reside. Even if you're not a huge fan of working out or whatever that might be, maybe you don't have a New Year's resolution, you just want to have a tasty treat, Built Bar is the way to go. Go to Built.com, use the promo code, and get 15% off your order. The promo code is, of course, LOCKED15, LOCKED15, for 15% off at Built.com. Start the new year off right with some Built Bars. All right, rounding things out here on your first listen of the day, and we come to the segment that everybody's talking about, is the dude of the game. And Chelsea, as the first-time guest on Locked On Raptors, you have the honor of naming our dude of the game for the game against the Sixers last night. Take it away.
I definitely at the beginning of the game didn't think I was going to pick who I'm going to pick, but I went with Chris Boucher, and it was last night was great. I mean, I definitely was on that kind of like, what are we doing with Chris Boucher kind of side of the argument with him. There was definitely some concern in a few games, but last night he came out and I think he said something about how the game against Cleveland showed what being a first option is like, and he didn't really like it. And so I think he came out and he just like knew what his assignment was, and he just did it, and it was amazing. And I'm like, okay, if he can play like this every game, then we're good. And he did incredible. He was just finding his opportunities. He was really active, on the glass and just trying to snatch up any rebounds that he could, which is like something that our team right now kind of struggles with. And so I was so impressed with his shot making ability, with the way that he was being really aggressive, the way that he was trying to, and obviously the assignment last night for him was a tough one. Being a center when you're up against someone like Embiid is like a really high task, and he stepped up and he made an impact, and I was incredibly impressed.
Yeah, I definitely expected Chris Boucher was going to fall down more in this game guarding Joel Embiid. Kind of maintained his upright standing nature quite a bit. That was lovely to see. I think, yeah, wonderful due to the game pick here. 28 points, 19 boards. He's done that twice in the last 10 months or 8 months or whatever it's been. And he is the only player in Raptors history to have ever done it even one time. So that's bloody impressive. And, it was just one of those games, like, they needed that outburst, right? They're not in this game even, like, remotely if he doesn't have that sort of string where he's like, all right, I guess I'm just taking all the threes. And it's one of those things where it starts out where it's one of those, oh, no, 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 yes situations. And then by, like, the third three, it's like, all right, dude, cook, you're hot. Heat check every single time down the floor. And he did that. And, like, he didn't just score from 3-point range, right? This wasn't just an unseasonably warm night shooting. He had 5 2-pointers made. He shot 5 of 7 on those. He was really, really excellent. His defense at the rim, again, there's only so much he's going to do against Embiid, but I thought he was kind of flying around, offering some good help defense and contests and whatnot. A really, really impressive and essential game, really, from Chris Boucher last night in a pretty tough spot. And he lately has really kind of ticked up over his last 8 games. Chelsea Boucher's at 15.6 points a game, 35% from 3 on 4.3 attempts, which is closer to the crazy season he had last year shooting. He's up to near 80% from the free throw line, 8.4 boards as well. Like averaging more than a block a game in that time, 26 minutes a game over that time. It's been a pretty nice little run here for Boucher. I don't necessarily know if it changes my overall outlook on him. And I think, my outlook has always been, I think he's a fun and cool regular season player who makes the regular season more fun when he goes off like he does. But do I trust him in a playoff series? No, not ever. Not going to happen. Last night doesn't change that, but it does give me a little bit more hope that he can kind of offer those fun flourishes a little bit more often. And those flourishes can sometimes lead to wins. So that's where I'm kind of at with Chris Boucher here. And his improvement has really sort of, in theory, amped up the depth once they are back at full health. Who's to say he'll kind of maintain the form when he's back down being the 9th or 10th man? But this kind of leads me to a question for you, Chelsea. I've been thinking about this because this Raptors team, I think, is good. I think there is enough here to say that this team is good. The top 6 most used lineups for this team, all positives, some of which very much so in the positive, or 6 of the top 7 lineups, whatever it might be. Yeah, there's only one in their top 6 that's a negative, and it's just barely negative in 47 minutes. And so they have the profile of a team that's kind of on the rise. Their offense remains pretty solid. Their defense is on the rise from where it was at the start of the season. That Cavs game throws all the data out of whack a little bit, but they look like a team. The profile of the team looks like something that you can work with here over the back part of the season. And if Boucher is going to offer some of that second unit depth, which they've lacked so much this year, Yuta Watanabe is playing extremely well right now. You're kind of looking at a team that once they're full health has 8-9 guys who are pretty reliable. What do you think is possible for this team down the stretch here, Chelsea? Like, do you think a real run is possible, like a contention for the 6th seed, or should we set our expectations a little lower than that?
Yeah, I think the main key with this team is health. Unfortunately, they've been in some really tough circumstances these past few years, as everyone has. And unfortunately, when it comes to the NBA, they kind of get like the rough end of the stick a lot of the time because, with regulations being different and traveling more and all this stuff. But they just need to get healthy. And I'm definitely of the belief that, if we have all of our healthy guys and we get a good run with all of them, I can see them being the 6th seed. I can see them having a good run. I mean, if you get Scotty Barnes in a playoff situation, I think that's incredible. I mean, him and Fred and, all those guys who have a little bit more playoff experience as well. Like, I think they could have a really fun run and, see something in the end. And, I think people are quick to kind of like be like, oh, well, this season hasn't gone well. We should start going downward. But I'm definitely the opposite. I'm like, let's get healthy and let's go for a run and see what happens. And I definitely think this is the season where anything is possible. I think we saw, for those of you listening who follow the WNBA, it was a season like that where someone kind of came from lower in the standings and won it all. And I think that's possible this season, especially with everything being so up in the air with, protocols and people being in and out and, certain teams missing stars for certain reasons. If it's the year that, something crazy is going to happen, it's definitely this year. So, I mean, I love it. I say we get healthy, we go for it, we see what happens. Scotty Barnes is incredible, and I think he would be really good in a playoff situation. So I want to see it.
Yeah, this team is undeniably too good to tank. There's a lot of good players on this team who can make things happen, and I think altogether the final product looks to be pretty intriguing. And there are lots of really really bad teams that they're going to have a really hard time out tanking. The Pacers, Magic, Pistons in the East. Half the West sucks. It's there's not an easy path to being terrible, and I think there's a pretty reasonable path to being a 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. Look, the Cavs are good, the Heat are really good, but they've been going through some health stuff. They just had more guys as we record right now go into the protocols. There is going to be opportunities to gain ground on some of these teams because they run into COVID problems. It's just the reality of this season. And maybe the Raptors have gotten their big scare out of the way. Who knows? It's possible they get back into it and all that. But, I think there's pretty green pastures ahead. And also, if I'm looking at the teams in the Eastern Conference, the Hornets don't scare me. The Wizards don't scare me. The Celtics certainly don't scare me. And I don't think the Knicks are very good either, despite their last couple wins, bing bong, etc. I think the Raptors at full health, at full capacity, are better than all those teams. The Hawks, I would maybe sort of take the Hawks just because of the talent level, but there's no reason they can't push at least for the 7 seed. And if someone falls out of that top 6 because of COVID or whatever, then there's very much going to be a 6 seed for the taking there as well. So yeah, I'm pretty encouraged after last night. It was nice to just see a fun basketball game. My God, I don't know about you, but watching that Cavs game and just sort of watching all these fake basketball games around the league recently, it's been kind of a drag, and it was cool to see last night not be that, which was just a breath of fresh air. Chelsea, it was lovely having you on the show, and this was very much a delight, much like watching the Raptors last night. Thanks for being here. Do you have anything you would like to promote for the good people out there before we get out of here?
Follow me on Twitter. I post most of my writing there, so find me there.
Excellent. At Chelsea Leite on Twitter. You can see it right there on the screen if you're watching the podcast on YouTube, which you should be, frankly. Subscribe on YouTube. I don't know why you wouldn't. It's very much appreciated when you go ahead and do that. You can also find me on Twitter at Woodley Sean. You can subscribe to, rate, review on your favorite podcast apps for free as well. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Raptors your first listen of the day. We will be back again tomorrow. Katie Heindel's going to pop on the podcast. We're going to do a little mailbag to close out 2021, as I'll be off on Friday. So tomorrow will be the last episode of the year before we move into the new year. In the meantime, go make your second listen of the day, Locked On Bets, with your boy Q and Lee Sterling from Paramount Sports, doing a wonderful job making sense of the nonsense that is the betting scene right now with the amount of COVID going around the pro sports leagues. They are helping you cut through it and still win some money. So go listen to Locked On Bets. Check it out. And we will talk to you again tomorrow with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.